Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met on Monday with U.S. Envoys Steve and Jared Kushner. The meeting came after weekend violence threatened to wreck a fragile U.S. brokered ceasefire in Gaza. The Israeli spokesperson in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office, Sosh Bedrosian, stated that the state of Israel will not accept any violations of the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, and the IDF will respond with force to any violation that endangers the security of our soldiers and its citizens.
The state of Israel will not accept any violations of the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, and the IDF will respond with force to any violation that endangers the security of our soldiers and its citizens. Now, following the series of attacks in response to Hamas violating the ceasefire and attacking our soldiers, around 9 p.m. Sunday Israel time, the IDF began the renewed enforcement of the ceasefire. We will not only continue to uphold the ceasefire agreement, but we will enforce it. Let it be known and understood.
Well, Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir on Monday called for the enactment of a law allowing the death penalty for those convicted of terrorism. As Israel's parliament opened its winter session, Ben-Gvir urged Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to resume intense military operations in Gaza and dismantle Hamas. And for more, we have Akshay Tongre joining us. Well, Akshay, given President Trump's strong warning about the potential eradication of Hamas and simultaneously Vice President J.D. Vance also heading for Israel, what implications might this have for the U.S. diplomatic efforts and neutrality, most importantly, in the ceasefire monitoring process?
Well, as far as the neutrality is concerned, hardly there is any Lipakshi, because US has actively backed, it has supported, it has been an ally of Israeli defense forces, of the Israeli government. Hamas has support from the West Asian nations, a few of them at least, including Qatar and some of the fighting forces there, like the Houthis. As far as the neutrality is concerned, there is an illusion of neutrality, but there is none. Because we are seeing that the Israeli Defense Forces have continued operation in Gaza. However, there has been hardly any condemnation from the US side of these targeted attacks that are going on against Hamas targets. However, the US president has threatened that if Hamas continues any kind of retaliation or any kind of action against Israel, then there clearly are going to be repercussions, and the group will be annihilated. We are seeing that yes, there are instances that are happening of ceasefire violations, but as far as the overall situation is concerned, though there were initially indications coming in that this is actually going to be a permanent solution, but nothing of that sort has happened so far, and what we are seeing is a very, very volatile and dangerous situation. Irrespective of what claims are being made by either sides, both maintain a clear trust deficit. That is one of the most difficult challenge for the peacemaking process there in the region.
Absolutely, trust deficit there. But Akshay, tell me, how does the disparity between the expected and the actual number of the hostage bodies returned by Hamas affect the overall stability of the ceasefire, because everything right now is on stack?
Well, the situation is being monitored by both sides, because like I said, the trust deficit is so high that the Hamas believes that if all the hostages are returned, then they lose all the leverages for any kind of ceasefire deal or peacemaking deal there. Similarly, Israel also is apprehensive about the intentions of Hamas. They think that the bodies will not be returned, the hostages will not be returned unless Hamas makes further demands of more prisoners to be swapped with the hostages, or the attacks from the fringe elements at least will continue against the Israeli targets. So it's quite fragile right now. What we can observe in the last few weeks at least. The situation remains quite fragile. The trust deficit remains very high. There is no there is hardly any pressure as far as the Western allies are concerned, because ultimately the peacemaking process will have to be initiated by the two parties that are involved. And as far as the questions on the violation of ceasefire, US has clearly said that it is not going to be the US troops that will target Hamas if it refuses to return the hostages, or if it refuses to abide by the ceasefire deal. But it is going to be the countries that have agreed to send their troops in to ensure peace in the region, and they will be taking on Hamas targets. So, claims and counterclaims are being made. There is no clarity as such that who is calling shots, because there are so many parties involved now that the situation has become quite complicated at this time.
Absolutely no clarity as such right now, Akshay. But what does the push by Israeli leaders like Itamar Ben-Gvir for harsher measures such as the death penalty and renewed military action, what he's mentioning, signal about the overall ceasefire agreement?
Well, like we have been reporting, Lipakshi, for many days, there is a fringe element that remains in Hamas that went against the ceasefire deal, and there was an attack near the Rafah border. Where two Israeli people lost their lives. Similarly, there are also right-wing groups, more for the far-right groups in the Israeli government as well, who are supporting the Benjamin Netanyahu government. They're calling for renewed action against Hamas, disarmament of the group completely. Many have called for even harsher measures as to occupation of the Gaza Strip. So there are both the sides have these more radical voices that are perhaps one of the biggest challenge for this ceasefire deal.
All right, Akshay, thank you so much for all those details.